I'd like to welcome Isabel Hilton to the stage. Quite a different angle we're going to go to now in our final 3-minute talk, which is focus on China. So Isabel is a leading journalist and has facilitated the first ever platform to facilitate dialogue between Chinese and Westerners in a bilingual website format. So over to you, Isabel.
I'm going to stand here having failed to solve the problem of what you do with a lapel mic when you don't have a lapel. Okay, so it's not the first time I've done that. Oh, yes, and then there's China 3 minutes. And there are two things that always come to mind, right? So one is my favorite Monty Python sketch, which is that the one about the summarized Proust competition, where the 7-volume À la recherche du temps perdu gets down to 15 seconds. And the second one is I owe to General de Gaulle, the late Charles de Gaulle, who produced an absolutely incomparable remark about China. When asked what he thought about China, he said, with tremendous solemnity, China is a very big country and a lot of people live there. Which, like a lot of banalities, actually we do well to bear in mind because it's such an obvious truth that we tend to forget it. And in China, size really, really matters. And if you forget that China is the world's biggest carbon emitter, the world's 1/5 of the world's population, will be the biggest economy by 2035, 2050, world's biggest installed wind, world's biggest manufacturer of solar, etc., etc. If you forget those things, you tend to attribute what happens in China to all sorts of other and probably fictitious qualities like Oriental wisdom or the great sagacity of the Chinese Communist Party. A lot of it is just about size. And because China is so big, because it's having this compressed transition, this compressed development, it impacts us all very directly. So rather than trying to cram a million facts into 3 minutes, I thought it might be useful to offer some hints about how to read what you read about China. An awful lot of the books about China, and there is an unsustainable tsunami of books about China, but most of them that cross my desk are not really about China at all. They're about us. They're about how we are alarmed, excited, afraid, frightened about the rise of China. So First hint, any book with dragon in the title you have on your bookshelf, you can probably throw it away. It's not really going to do you any good. And it's really going to tell you that America's failing or the European Union is going to fall apart or we've forgotten how to innovate and manufacture and those things which are really about us and not about China at all. So things that tell you that China is going to rule the world or its evil twin, China is about to collapse, I think I would take that with a pinch of salt. There are other things that you should also take with a pinch of salt, a few often repeated myths. One is the doctrine of exceptionalism that China has, rather like the American doctrine of exceptionalism, but the Chinese one says China is a uniquely old and unchanged civilization, and this means that it will always be frightfully different, and we can't judge China by any other standards but those determined by the Chinese leadership. Well, it's partly true, but it's not what's important. China is an old civilization, but it's a very young country. 100 years since the revolution of 1911 brought the end of the Qing dynasty, 60 years just over since the founding of the People's Republic. China is a nation still in the course of nation building. No one has ever tried to run China before as a nation state, and we don't really know that it can be done. So we can expect surprises. China, unchanging China. China never invaded anybody. It's all totally tickety-boo, and we know what it does. Well, one basic question, if China has never expanded, if the borders are the same, why is the Great Wall in the middle of the country? Just try it next time you're in Beijing. Fact is, China is, in the course of construction. A little story. In the 1840s, a man called what was his name? Hung Xiuquan. Sorry, blanked on his name. Hung Xiuquan like a lot of people in the 1840s in China, wanted to become an official because that's kind of how you got on, still is actually. But he kept taking the civil service exams and he kept failing, and this was pretty bad news. He fell ill. He had a raging fever for a couple of weeks, and he came round, and his mind was clear. He saw absolutely what he had to do, and his past troubles were behind him, and he knew with a absolutely unshakable certainty that he was the younger brother of Jesus Christ, and God was calling on him to reform China. First lesson: beware of people with resolute conviction, because it's not always the right thing. Now, we've all sort of met people who think they're the youngest brother of Jesus Christ. I meet them quite a lot, many of them in large companies. But this one, instead of, dying in a loony bin or becoming a CEO, raised a rebellion that lasted for 17 years, 20 million dead, nearly brought down the Qing dynasty. Quite impressive. So my conclusion from this is China's full of surprises. Expect the unexpected. We don't know what the next crisis will be, and we don't necessarily know that the next crisis will be an opportunity. It might just be horrible. The next myth: China's produced a miracle that has lifted 300 or I think I heard 500 million people out of poverty. Well, yeah, some truth in it again, but I'm no theologian, but I always believe that I understood that miracles didn't really have a big downside. China's model of development in the last 30 years, enormous downsides. And it's also true for the future that, of course, the Chinese Communist Party has lifted 300 million people out of poverty, but it's more true that 1.3 billion Chinese people have lifted the Communist Party out of poverty, thus bringing us to a Gini coefficient which is well into the danger zone. So China is not entirely stable as a result of its 30-year miracle. What will the next crisis be, and what will it produce? Min-Shin Pei, the China scholar, argues that we are currently in a state of frozen transition in China, and there are a lot of things that need to change. The political system needs to change. Everybody knows it. Nobody knows how to get from here to there. There is a big vested interest problem. Talking about trying to change powers that be, there is a big problem in China trying to do that at present. It took the combination of Tiananmen crisis in 1989 and Deng Xiaoping to launch the reforms of 1992. What will it take to launch the necessary next phase of reform? We don't really know, but we do know that the next generation of politicians are not Deng Xiaoping. They're definitely in the sort of bureaucratic rather than the charismatic phase of revolution, and they're not going to have that quality of leadership. So it could be, if I can feel you fidgeting, I'm over my 3 minutes. What can I do? Well, I guess that's it. Expect the unexpected. What can I say?